41 years ago, on this very day, a strange occurrence happened. A woman who had spent the past 9 months of her life in preparation for motherhood received a shocking surprise, one that would change her life forever. She had spent the last 9 months preparing everything for her baby, choosing the right names and deciding on the colour of the nursery, going to many doctor appointments to check on the health of the baby, telling all her friends and family about the little bundle of joy she was expecting. Eventually, finding out she was expecting a baby boy. She finally settled on the name Christopher, and eventually the big day arrived. She and her husband went to the Northern Westchester Hospital in Mount Kisco, New York. They arrived late at night, exhausted and excited at the same time. Finally, they would meet their precious baby boy for the first time. It was a long and grueling process. Nearly 5 hours of hard labor went by, till finally the baby was born. But something was wrong. When the baby came out, it appeared to be covered in a green sticky substance. At first, the doctors simply thought there was something off about the colour of the placenta and began to gently wash the child. However, after clearing the first initial layer of goo from him, they noticed the peculiarities. His skin was a faint sickly green, and he seemed to ooze a thin slimy mucous membrane. The doctors were horrified and baffled, as they had never seen such an oddity. So they cautiously went to the awaiting parents and began to break the news. The parents, while confused and baffled by the situation, still took the child with open, loving arms. Rumour has it he is still out there somewhere to this day, trying to live a normal life.
Okay, so I just had one hell of a night. I'm at a Motel Inn on my way to my sister's wedding. Nothing out of the ordinary happened on my way here. I was chilling in my car alone, listening to some audiobooks that I like to revisit sometimes when I just want to listen to something, but still be able to drift off into my own little world. I had just listened through a couple of chapters of Dan Brown's book, The Lost Symbol, when I arrived at the motel parking lot. It was damp and quiet when I stepped outside my car. The only things you could hear was the dripping of raindrops falling through the leaves and soft music coming from a radio in the reception's front desk, where an older man with grey hair was doing his crossword and drinking from what I suspect one of many cups of coffees he consumes throughout his shifts. I walked into the motel reception to get my room ready. Also to ask the man where the nearest place I could buy cigarettes from was. "No need, sir. You can take mine," he said, as he put a pack of red Marlboro into my hands, along with a key to my room. "My daughter announced her pregnancy earlier this evening, so my wife wants me to quit smoking so I can be around for the little one," he said with a happy chuckle. After congratulating him on the great news, I accepted the cigarettes and room key with a small bow that I picked up from my time working in Asia. When I walked outside to search for my room, I saw him. In a busy city, you would barely notice him, but at a motel in the middle of nowhere, he stood out like a candle in a dark room. It was a silver-painted man, sitting hunched down with his silver matching hat covering his eyes, being completely still. I suppose he wanted to look like a statue of some sort, but the rain had been starting to wash off that spray paint he had on his skin. I was walking to my room at the end of the building, keeping an eye on him the whole time, hoping he wouldn't do any sudden moves to startle me, but he just sat there, completely and absolutely frozen. I managed to unlock my room with trembling hands as I kept watching the silver-painted man still sitting there, completely quiet. As I got in, I threw my bags on the dusty bed, creating a tiny storm of dust making it through my room. When I finally managed to let out a sigh of relief, I hate traveling alone, especially now as the paranoia has started to come back. To relieve my anxiety, I walked to the bathroom window at the far end of the room to crack it open so I could sneak a cigarette without the need to leave and see the man. When I was about to take my last drag of nicotine goodness, I heard something ruffling through the woods behind the motel. I thought, hell no, and quickly put out the cigarette on the bathroom sink and closed the window. Went to the motel phone to call the front desk to ask if they could remove the creepy man sitting outside my room. "Hello, Mr. Connors. Everything is alright with the room, I hope," said the old man after a loud sip of his coffee. Yes, the room is fine, but I have a complaint about the silver man," I replied, not knowing how odd it sounded. "The silver man?" he replied with clear confusion in his voice. "Yes, the creepy silver man sitting outside my room," I said with irritation. "I'm sorry, sir, but you were the only male guest here tonight." An expression of confusion and fear had frozen upon my face as a chill rolled down my spine. As I stood there quietly, trying to figure out if the long drive had made me so tired that I might have imagined him, I heard the old man yell from the phone. "Sir, are you still there?" "Yes, sorry. Everything is fine, thank you. Have a good night," I said as I ended the call. With fear of losing my sanity, I had to know for sure if I had imagined the silver man or not. So I went to the window next to the door to see if I could see him from there. Sure thing, I could still see him sitting there, hunched forward like he was trying to make himself look like a roll of tape. His face still wet from the rain, with silver paint fading by the minute. This had now started to make me angry, so I went outside to confront him, but not a single reaction came from the man after I slammed the motel door open. Is he sleeping? I wondered as I slowly walked over to him. When I approached him, I noticed something was very odd with the position he was sitting in. He had his hands behind his back, while resting his head floating in the air, inches from his crotch. He must really be drunk to fall asleep like that, I thought. "Hey man, are you okay?" I asked, without getting any reply. I leaned forward to get a better look at him, which is when I noticed the small drops of blood dripping from his nose into his crotch. My heartbeat started to race as I quickly stepped backwards away from him, then started to run towards the reception desk for help. "Call 911, I yelled as I stumbled my way into the reception desk, where the old man greeted me with a surprised expression. "Why? What happened?" he said, confused. "Call 911 now! There is a man bleeding outside my hotel room," I yelled, with panic in my voice. As the motel receptionist called 911, I grabbed a bunch of napkins, thinking I could use it to maybe stop the bleeding. I turned the corner from the reception office where the motel rooms are quickly to get the man's aid. When I noticed he had now fallen completely over and the hat had rollen off, I could now see his face clearly. The blood that I had seen dripping from his nose came from his open eye sockets. The man was dead. Police arrived shortly after the phone call from the motel clerk. They questioned us about what we've seen during the night, but all I can think about is the expression of the dead man, of how his existence in this world has just vanished, and all he left behind was his body painted for entertainment, but like an empty candy wrapper. All the good is now gone. I'm now back in my room, tired as hell, and ready to go to sleep. I had just brushed my teeth when I noticed the bathroom window was open. Below it, inside the bathtub, I saw a black business card. After quickly closing the window, I picked it up. All it said was, If you enjoyed tonight's entertainment, please visit the website to see more, with a web link and a signature signed The Entertainer. I'll start by saying this is all true. I've changed the location names, etc., in order to protect anyone stupid enough to go looking for this place. I grew up in the greater metropolitan area of New York, New Jersey, and in one town we moved to, we lived on a dead-end street. Down the middle of the road were the town limits, making across the street another town altogether. The area across the street was zoned for commercial use, so instead of houses, we had a view of 3 factories, a car mechanic, and a used car lot. Most afternoons after school, I'd hang out outside my house with a couple of friends, either riding bikes or kicking a ball around. One day, my friend JC kicked our ball into the bushes outside the sewing factory, directly across from my house. It was a nearly dilapidated brick building, with darkened windows and a steel door that creaked loudly each morning when employees would arrive to start their shifts. We never saw the employees, but would hear the door in the pre-dawn hours, and figured it was when they'd arrive. From outside, you could often hear the loud sounds of sewing machines, the banging of tools, and the occasional scream and grunt. It was coupled with puffs of hot steam plumping non-stop into the air at all hours of the day and night, and a stale smell that always reminded me of standing sewer water. None of us wanted to venture into the overgrown bushes, but after losing the best of 3 rounds of rock, paper, scissors, I found myself begrudgingly digging through the stinging nettles and what I imagined was poison oak to find our ball had landed squarely on the rotting carcass of an animal. I scrambled back, cussing up a storm. My friends ran over, only to stumble back from the rotten stench of decay that wafted up into the air. The commotion resulted in 2 things. First, the noise from the factory stopped. For the first time in ever, the endless sound just stopped. Secondly, the heavy steel door opened slowly in front of us. Hot steam escaped into the late afternoon air, and from inside there stepped a tall man. I don't know what we expected, but it wasn't what we saw. He was a white man with curly black hair in a half mullet, high-waisted jeans, and a crisp white overstarched shirt and shiny black dress shoes. He didn't look like anyone we'd seen in our neighborhood, let alone any factory foreman we'd ever seen. We lived in a very diverse working-class neighborhood, and this guy looked like someone straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting. "Well, hello, young people," he said, cocking his head to the side as he looked down on us. His voice was nasally and saccharine, and his cadence was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It made listening to what he was saying difficult. He was clean-shaven, and his skin was so white it showed almost every blue vein in his forearms and face. "Oh, I see. You lost your ball. Let me help you," he said, his sing-song cadence almost lulling me into a false sense of safety. It was only JC tugging on me to pull me up and away that broke the momentary spell. We didn't wait for the ball, instead hopping on our bikes and riding away. Looking back, I saw him standing at the center of the road watching us, ball in hand. I couldn't stay away forever, and as the sun set, I rode back alone. There on my front step was a brand new soccer ball with a small note attached. "Your other ball had something on it, your neighbour Steve." I dropped my bike onto the floor and looked at the note as well as the new ball. While very nice and a lot better than my old one, I still didn't want it. Something about Steve gave me the creeps, and my grandmother had taught me that when the creeps kick in, we listen. It was only a few days later that I discovered just why I was right to have listened to my grandmother. It was during a game of touch football that our friend Carlos found himself atop a pile of garbage bags on the curb of the sewing factory. Sanitation had gone on strike, and garbage pickup was disrupted. Garbage that would have previously been picked up in the early dawn hours was now sitting, piled haphazardly, on the curb. Our taunts of Carlos lasted only until we noticed the dark, vicious fluid that seeped from the bags under Carlos. "Oh, that's nasty," I can remember one of the girls saying as we moved closer to see what it was. It was then we got hit with a smell. Some gagged, the rest watched onto the street. I ran up into my house and called my mother. She called the cops, and soon they closed down the street and got a warrant to search the factory. Inside, they found coolers filled with unidentifiable cuts of meat, a wall covered in wigs made with human hair, and tanned skins being made into brand-name purses and wallets. We watched as grown cops needed smelling salts, some looking green as they stumbled out of the factory, covering their mouths. In the office, they found file folders full of employee paperwork that matched up with missing persons reports going back years. My dad told us most had been undocumented and likely not to be noticed if they went missing. I remember crying for hours with my mum and others that gathered at the candlelit vigil for all those lost. It was only after the police tape was gone, and that the further was forgotten, that I once again saw our neighbour Steve, standing in the middle of the road, looking up to my window, my soccer ball in hand as he waved.
I recently started playing this mobile game called Among Us that's been circulating around social media these days. For a tour on what it is all about, the game allows up to 10 players to join in a room. 9 play as crewmates, and there is at least one random imposter chosen by the game itself at random for every round. The objective is for crewmates to accomplish tasks and escape the spaceship while the imposter gets to kill and sabotage tasks until he is caught and ejected. Now, the game itself already has a creepy sort of atmosphere, especially with the background music on the main menu, but it gets creepier with my experience playing it. Know that you join rooms with random people of various nationalities and walks of life, so every time you play is a new experience. I was having a great time with a bunch of people. We've been through 5 rounds together, and trust me, it does get addicting when you play with the right people. One of the guys decided that it was enough playtime for today, and he's got to go. So naturally, another random player joins the room to fill him in, and his in-game name was simply X. He was pretty psyched, immediately wanting to start, while I and the other guys were still chatting. You cannot chat when the game starts. You can only chat when it's time to vote out a possible imposter. This was normal. I mean, I was like this when I first got involved with the game. The chances of being an imposter with 10 players are slim, so obviously I still didn't get the chance to be one on this 6th round. We played as usual, finishing up tasks and trying to do so in pairs, some sort of strategy we came up with. An emergency meeting, which you can do so in the game in case you suspect someone to be the imposter, was cool. As mean as the following narrative sounds, the guy started ganging up on X, merely in jest, suggesting that he might be the imposter. X would deny this, of course, but with this game, one has to be tricky, so we can never know if he's telling the truth unless he gets ejected from this round, and we find out whether we eliminated the right or wrong player. Majority were already set on eliminating X, most likely without proof, and before X got ejected from the round, he sent on the chat, "If I do become imposter, I swear I'll kill you all and win this thing. Starting with you." He blamed the player who accused him without proof. It turns out he wasn't our guy, so we continued the round as usual until it was over. Back in the lobby, X had started reprimanding and trash-talking us of our actions, in which we replied to him in jests. This was a game after all. Hey, no need to get so worked up over a video game. 7th round now, look at that. Still not the imposter on my part. Oh well, I guess we just have to keep playing until everyone gets the chance to be one, right? This round was rather intense, as dead bodies, yes, the term in the game for when an imposter kills a crewmate is to report a dead body found by fellow crewmates. We're now involved, instead of just someone stupidly calling for an emergency meeting, just to vote someone out randomly without proof. What makes it more exciting is that this killer was elusive. I was wondering why everyone was being so nice to X and not suspecting him this round. Was it because he might explode in some kind of toxic tantrum again? For some reasons, everyone was just ignoring X now because of the behaviour shown last round. I felt bad ganging up on him then. What if the guy is a new player? Even if he isn't, he was played foul just because he's a new guy among the rest of us who have been playing for 5 rounds straight. In the end, it turns out that X was the imposter. I disconnected from the game because I felt pretty tired now, and besides, I've got other things to do. It was fun. That X player, if he just started out with the game, did mighty well in evading suspicion until he had killed off the others, except for me, which merited the imposter a victory if only one crewmate is standing. The next morning, I was browsing on my Facebook account when I saw a trend on 8 people found dead in one night, cause unknown. At first, I ignored it, just another mass murder kind of news. But then it merited a lot of shares and sympathies because it was pronounced that the death of these 8 individuals last night happened in different areas, but the time of death was what connected them. It was about the same time I quit from the Among Us game. Coincidences happen, right? What has the death of 8 people got to do with some dumb online game that's just recently gone famous? I read one article in full and learned, eerily, that these individuals had another thing in common. They all had X marks etched on their foreheads. At the time I finished reading the article, my phone tinged with a message notification. I opened it and read, "I told you I will kill you all and win this thing."